Hi. I really want to talk to you about this. I'm wearing my special education shirt. It says Love Life on it because what I want to encourage you to do says Love Life. There you go. Is encourage you to love life because the future doesn't look very good. And I think that if you'll stay to the end and get the full grasp, you'll have a better idea of what's going on and why things are so uncertain. In the same way that the current administration of most countries are having problems manipulating and overseeing the issues going on, the world has the same situation. It's not just your leadership. There are a lot of things going on that really need some clear understanding. The beginning of sapiens, of life as we think about ourselves, and the progression that you learned, of course, in junior high or high school, about how we went from Neanderthals and so forth and so on up to human beings was something that started about 10,000 years ago. The world was created way before that, but about 10,000 years ago, we came into a period of time. It's called the Holocene, and it's supposed to last about 11,700 years. And the Holocene is a period of time when the weather was warm enough for us to be relatively comfortable most of the year. The humidity was right for us. The air was appropriate for the trees that give the oxygen that we needed to breathe. It's just that the world became a space for us. Now, you probably studied all this in high school, but it doesn't have the same kind of impact as it does when you go from being a child to a teen to an adult to a parent or a grandparent or even a brother or sister of somebody, an aunt or an uncle. You look at the world differently, and that's really important because if you don't do that, you're not going to be able to understand what I'm talking about. Okay, so think 11,700 years, and it was 10,000 years ago that we came into being as something close to what we are now. So that means there still was 1,700 years to do something with, supposedly. Now, remember that all of this is by experts. I'm just forwarding the information, and something that, as a teacher, especially a teacher of special education children who were all second language learners, their first language was Spanish. I only ever taught one child who was born with the first language English. I've learned how to break things down in such a way that they're easier to understand. So we're really not sure about all of these time frames, but we do know that in 1859, a man named Drake noticed that there was this black stuff coming up under the earth, and someone he worked for suggested too that they should find out what it is and what to do with it. Well, he put a pipe down into the ground 69.5 feet, and whew, up came the oil. So he discovered that this was a good product to use for things like roofs, to kind of waterproof roofs. And he used it for roadways because it kept that more waterproof so that it was easier for horses and people to walk along. And then they started using it for other things. And he had this waste product that he wasn't paying very much attention to until 1892 when someone realized that it was very flammable. And the history that you've studied is Ford Motor Company, of course. We created the the engine, the gas engine, and created a car, and you know about that. Okay? Okay, so in the early 19th century, in the early 20th century, the cars became they're on the road because in 1892 they discovered gasoline. Okay, then we had to have cars and we had to have gas stations and all that. And we took all of this for granted, okay, because we grew up with it. I mean, it wasn't like we were in this whole process for 10,000 years. But during those 10,000 years, before this occurred in 1892, we lived a very, very simple life. And that's why I've spoken about Nate, N-A-T-E, Hagens, H-A-G-E-N-S. He has a website called The Great Simplification. And by that, he means a lifestyle a lot more like I live. I live on a rural piece of property. It's about 5-6 acres. We're growing food. We're replenishing the soil. I've only been here a year, so it's quite a job. But as you can see over here, there's a lot of things growing, and there's a lot of area for things to grow. There's a lot of land out there. These are all subsistence farmers in this area, so they're all growing what they need. And they're all painfully aware of climate change because it's affected how they grow, when they plant, and so forth. So it's comfortable for me. I don't have to, I'm not fluent in Spanish anyway, but I don't have to worry about speaking up about what's going on with the climate because they're painfully aware of it. But the point is that in order to care for oneself, it takes a good deal of land. And I want you to grab this concept right now so that as we're talking, it's going to make more sense to you. In order to have 8 billion people on this planet, we've had to have electrical energy, coal energy, gas energy, transportation. And we have big cities where people do not have 5 or 6 acres to grow food on. I mean, there was the book many years ago, 5 Acres in Independence. And that's what it was talking about, how you could take care of yourself. But anyone who's tried it, anyone who's tried to grow their own cows and their own goats and their own chickens and their own bunnies and their so forth to feed their family and all of their vegetables and fruits and everything has discovered it takes a long time. Like avocados can take 10 years to finally become an avocado. And it takes a lot of space, and it takes a lot of work. And let's talk about work for a minute. 1 gallon of gas can produce enough energy equal to a human being working for 1 month. Okay, so you see that cheap energy that was discovered in 1892 turned that 1 gallon of gas into 1 month of human beings' work. Now, that's really hard to process, okay? But what it means is, and I'm going to look down here to make sure I've got the numbers right. 5 billion people have 500,000 billion humans of activity because of what he calls cheap energy. The cheap energy is the energy which is called the carbon pulse. We are right now in what's known as the age of humans. This is the Holocene period. This is the period where, as I said at the beginning, the air is warm and the humidity is right for us, and we can enjoy. Do we need to dig a hole right now? Could we do that later? Thank you, dear. Okay, we use on this planet equal to 170 billion light bulbs every day. That's what keeps this planet going. And those of you who know about the war in Iran and may have done some research, I've done a great deal of research on this. And you know where the Strait of Hormuz is, and 20% of the fuel comes through there. And you've also probably aware that the President of the United States has said it's not a problem. Well, that's not true. It is a problem because 20% of all that comes through there has been used by lots of different parts of the world, and that's 1/5. And if you're familiar with running a business, you know that as soon as the word comes out that the Holocene is closed, the prices are going to go up because they're anticipating the increase that's going to be necessary, but they're going ahead and getting you used to it at this point. So it's going to get worse and worse and worse. And at some point, there's going to be a shortage because the Holocene period is only going to last so long. And the other aspect is, and I know you've heard this before, the more you try to get the harder access to oil, the more expensive it gets. It's like digging gold. You know, when people first went out and started digging gold in the 1800s, and they all headed west for the gold rush, and the people found large pieces of gold, and lots of people got rich, and lots of people spent their money on equipment and got nothing. But the point is, now it's difficult to find gold. It's very, very difficult to find gold, and gold has become a product that is more and more and more expensive. Because when I started studying jewelry design in the 1960s, the late 1960s, gold was locked in at $32 an ounce. And now gold is over $4,000 an ounce. So that's an excellent example of the less you have, and of course that was government controlled, the less you have, the more expensive it is. Okay, and the same is true of energy, whether it's coal or oil or gasoline or diesel or natural gas or wood, whatever you're burning, whatever creates energy. And the problem that Nate Hagens keeps pointing out, and I have to believe this is true because I've learned so much about this, and I know I was ignorant. We are energy blind, and that's because we've been born and are living in the carbon pulse age or the Holocene age, when since the 1892 we have discovered this product that took millions to create. You can't shoot a dinosaur today, have it die, and dig up the fuel a year later. It doesn't work that way. It takes a long, long time, compressed by all of the land to create this product that we're now using as gasoline. So it's a very complicated thing, and I'm sure I'm not absolutely clear about this, but I'm trying to put it in a layperson's terms because that's how I understand it. I am not an engineer by any means. I am a teacher, and I'm trying to teach you something about what's occurring. And what's occurring is we have 8 billion people on the planet. The planet will support 1 billion people without energy, cheap energy, because we each would have to have enough land, and a fertile enough land, and a good enough climate in order to produce all that we need for ourselves and our family. And of course that depends on the culture, because in some cultures people will have 1.5 children, and in other cultures they'll have 12.5 children. So there's a big difference there, and we've heard about this in many things over the years about, the more children you have, you either need them for helping on the farm or you have to provide for them, or both. I mean, it's very, very complicated. Now, give me a second to look here and make sure. Yes, what we really need to keep in mind, what we really have to keep in mind, is we have sun. I mean, as long as the sun is shining and occasional wind is blowing, we know we have two sources of energy that are available. They have been available, and they're getting less and less and less expensive as the years have gone by. I remember when we first went on solar, it was inordinately expensive, but it was 25 years ago, 30 years ago. Actually, my husband was on solar 35 years ago. So it was a lot more expensive. It's much, much less expensive now and much easier to use and makes more sense. And yes, we have solar. So that's really important to know that solar is available and it's less expensive, because if you find yourself without any energy in your house, you're going to want solar. Now, we have solar and we have on-grid power. We also have a local organization that provides as our service provider for the internet, which means when the power goes out, they're out too. But we also have Starlink, and we can go on solar power and use Starlink. So I don't have to worry about the bank account being accessed because I've got Starlink and solar power. But you won't if your power is out and your service provider is out. So think about those things. You won't be able to go to the grocery store if you don't have gasoline in your car. You won't be able to have anything electrical in your house unless the electric company is able to provide it with natural gas, coal, or some other fuel, depending on what fuel they use. Do they access it with solar and wind, or do they access it with, now Aloha, the next community up from us, is all on wind. They access it, 250,000 people on wind. So it is possible. I'm telling you it's possible. I mean, where we lived before, that was the on-grid power that we had. So we didn't have a problem with power. We had to move a year ago, and now we do, but we had solar then too, so it was not an issue. But it's important for you to look at what is not going to be available. Now, there's another catch to this whole thing with the war and the shortage of supplies and things. The fertilizer is dependent on some of these shipments that go through the Strait of Hormuz. Without fertilizer, the places that are growing non-organic food are going to be in trouble, and really in trouble, because they need that. And there's medical supplies. Apparently there's going to be a shortage of gloves, the gloves that people need to wear to operate on people. And as far as that's concerned, since Cuba, I just heard this yesterday, does not have what they need in terms of energy, 94,000 people in Cuba are waiting for surgery. And they can't have it because they don't have the energy they need to run the equipment in the hospital to do the surgery. Now, that's, of course, secondhand information that I got on the internet, so it could be inaccurate, but that's what I was told by a news station. 94,000 people in Cuba can't have surgery. And if we don't have gloves, how in the world are people anywhere going to have medical care? And what other medical supplies are made from plastic? Lots of things are made from plastic, and plastic requires petrol too. They require oil to make the plastic. There's already a shortage, I understand, in making plastic container wrap so that people can wrap and send certain things. So what's going to happen before long is there's going to be a supply chain issue that is also going to cause you some grief. So I'm saying that it would be a really good idea to kind of take stock of where you are right now and what you can or cannot do, or what you want or do not want to do, because simplifying your life is going to be very important. I highly encourage you to look at the great Simplification Film. It's also a website. Film, it's 32 minutes long, by Nate Hagens, Hagens. Their great simplification will explain this to you with pictures. I'm just me, no pictures. And I encourage you to look around at some of the other options that are available regarding solar and wind and survival, some of the things that you might want to also know, you might want to also consider, because simplifying your life is not real easy. We have lived with the carbon pulse, with this incredibly wealthy gift from the resources of the earth since 1892 as far as finding it, and since the 1940s as far as having it be an everyday supply. Until the 1940s, most people survived on farms. And so after the 1940s, people began to move into urban areas. And that will, like I said, that won't be possible if we're all raising everything we need, even if we're exchanging it with other people, because the effort it takes to grow food is going to outweigh the fact that you would have massive surpluses for other people to buy. And that's a problem, and also the incredible amount of energy it takes in a community. And the biggest thing right now, which I was, of course, devastated to learn, is how much it takes for an AI data center. It takes a massive amount of energy to run an AI data center. And it was a bad idea to come up with AI now, because we are at the end of the Holocene period, and although it may give us some information and give some people some money, it's not going to be for long. So that's a sad thing. I'm looking here. Okay, I don't see any. Oh yes, here it is. What we had 10,000 years ago. And we didn't grow, we just maintained ourselves in our little indigenous villages and little indigenous communities. But in 30 years, with GDP growth, our predicted growth, most countries expect 3% growth per year. But at 30 years, at 3%, we use up all that we have in 30 years. So if we had all been at 30%, it would have been gone by now. So keep that in mind too, that what took millions to create, we used up in 30 years, because this was the carbon pulse, the age of humans, the access of surplus energy that was cheap. It was just in the ground. We just had to take it out and use it, just like gold. But as you can see, gold is pretty much gone. I have no gold on me. I have platinum, but no gold. And silver. I have silver, but no gold. I have a silver necklace here that you probably can't see very well, but it reminds me to honor the earth. It's a human holding a garnet, which is my birthstone. And I always wear that to remind me to honor the earth, and that's what we haven't done. And I beg you to consider that it's a gift. We've been given this beautiful, resource-rich land. We've used it up real fast, and now is an opportunity to think about that and see how you can simplify your land, the way you live a little bit. If you have any questions for me, down below, I will be back with you. And if you want to reach me on Zoom, I'm available. And while you're down there, Summerland is the name of our nonprofit, and myself and another woman our artists. We've created things that remind you to take care of the earth. You might want to take a look or pass it on to a friend. Anyway, it was so nice to have you here today. I hope I helped you understand where we are and what's going on. Thank you.